Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of CEE Animation Experience. This event is organized by CEE Animation in cooperation with Animest Romania, and this is how you have me here today. The session was financially supported by the Creative Europe Media Program of the European Union, the Slovenian Ministry of Public Administration, and the Slovenian Film Center. Thank you very much. I will start by briefly talking about Animest, and then I will introduce the filmmaker whose lecture you are going to attend today. Animest is an international animation film festival that takes place in Bucharest every year, followed by editions in Chișinău, the Republic of Moldova, and several other cities of Romania. Animest is turning 16 this year, and the 2021 edition will take place between the 8th and the 17th of October in Romania, both physically and online, after an online edition that we had back in 2020 with only a few projects offline. But hopefully this year we are going back to the cinemas. Since June is the last month when we get submissions for this year's competition, let me just mention that you can submit your short or feature films until the 20th of June. And you can do it online. You just need to check the 7 competition categories on animest.ro. And now, let me introduce someone very special and very dear to Animest, a British artist born in Brazil, working and living between London and Bucharest. And today he will be live from his office in Romania. He's a graduate of the University of Wales, Newport, and of the Royal College of Art. And back in 2010, so 11 years ago, his graduation film Vovo was selected in the student competition of Animest. And that was the first time that our festival welcomed him in person. And I think the first time that he visited Romania as a filmmaker. Today, he will tell us a bit about his recipe for finding harmony between commercial work and personal work. You may send questions or messages that you will address at the end of his presentation. Just post them in the comments if you're on Facebook or in the chat box if you're on Zoom. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Luiz Stockler. Welcome, Luiz.
Thank you, Ligia. Thank you for the really nice introduction, and thank you to CEE for having me on this. It's a real pleasure. This is kind of my first online talk, so bear with me if there's any glitches, but I'm going to share my screen with you and let's see how it goes. Okay. Hang on a second. Okay, so I think that should be visible. Cool, so how to balance commercial work with personal work. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. It's going to be a bit of a deja vu of what Lee just said, but my name is Luiz Stockler. I'm an animation director and illustrator, originally from Brazil, now living in Bucharest. I was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, or as English people say, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And when I was 8 years old, I moved to the UK, where my mum is from. Here's a photo of me and my tortoise, Carrefour. That's what happens when you let your kids name pets. You give them supermarket names. When I was 8 years old, we moved to Wales in the UK, as I mentioned, where my mum's from. And I basically grew up in the United Kingdom. So I'm half-half, but I guess, you know, from my accent and stuff, to most people, I'm British, but I very much feel like I'm from both places. Here at the top, supposed to be a dragon on a Welsh flag. Yeah, I don't know if that communicates, but I made this little map just in case it's not clear that I'm Welsh, because obviously when you travel around the world, people think if you say I'm from the UK, they say England. You know, it's a bit like being Dutch and you say you're from the Netherlands and people say Holland. I've been sort of working as a director since 2013, and during that time, I've worked for a number of clients, big and small. So here's a few of them. I've also, I think it's probably useful for me to just show you like a summary of my work in a show reel so you can see some of my commercial work that I've directed. It's from 2019, but I mean, I think it's still relevant. that was my commercial work, and I've also made some films. I made Vorvor in 2010. You might recognize some of these if you're familiar with my work. September, October, November, which is quite an experimental film. Home and Montenegro, which was like my graduation film for my master's. I went and did bachelor's, and Lydia mentioned, at University of Wales, Newport from 2007 to 2010. So I've been kind of in the animation game for over 10 years. First year of Newport, it's quite different to now, I guess, animation schools, but the first year of Newport, all animation was done on paper. We just learned principles of animation, and we were shown a lot of different independent films by kind of animators from around the world. And I think when most of us apply for animation, we think we're going to make The Simpsons, or I guess now you'd say Rick and Morty or something. And I was like that, you know, I thought I'd make Wallace and Gromit and things like that. And instead, I was shown Jan Schwankmeyer and Michael Dudok de Wit, and, you know, we learned a lot about an array of filmmakers that were really inspiring. Don Hartsfeld, Bill Plimpton at the time, and, you know, there were also like a lot of very good graduates coming from that school. Daniel Gray, who did a talk the other day, he was a graduate of there before I started, and he made TOM, him and Tom Brown. And they'd been to Annecy, and they'd won awards at Sundance and stuff. So that was like someone quite sort of good to aspire to. So it was a pretty cool place, you know. It was kind of an art school, so they weren't training you to be animators in studios. They were training you to think about animation as art, as storytelling, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was really formative and very productive, as you can see. This is when we tried to see how many people could fit into a phone box. I think the number was like 10 or something. And this is me and my friends at Annecy. You might recognize Peter Millard. He's quite big these days in the independent animation scene as a filmmaker. We were in BA together, and then we did MA together as well. That was a pretty fun time, because we had this core group of people that were kind of interested in this stuff, and we'd share a lot of ideas together, and we sort of really taught each other about how important, like, you know, communicating your work and sort of making things that people connect with, and not just like gags and things like that, but like stuff with depth. So yeah, after I graduated from Newport, I went back to North Wales, to my mum's house, my stepdad's house, and I mean, I needed work, and I didn't feel fully ready to go into the sort of world of work. You know, I felt like I was just figuring out what I was doing after 3 years, and I had this graduation film, Vorvor, which was about my granddad. So I just thought, well, I'll send it to festivals, and we'll see what happens, and I'll go back home and, I don't know, try and figure stuff out. So I went back home and I worked on my stepdad's farm for 6 months. I drove tractors and cleaned cow poo, and, you know, worked with sheep. I learned a lot about, you know, that kind of work. Like, it was somehow quite therapeutic to do something completely different to what I'd been doing. And then in the evenings, I'd go into my room and apply for festivals. And it was just kind of this full-time job of applying for festivals and working on this farm to make money to pay for festival fees. At the time, you had to have digibeaters and pay for costs of postage and all that. Now it's all online submission, but this helped fund all that. And it was quite nice to get away from the desk, you know, and just be in nature for a bit. And I really enjoyed it. And I think, you know, it was a good time. Gave me muscles as well. And yeah, but I was leading this kind of parallel life where I was working on this farm, and then my film would get into festivals. And as Lydia mentioned, like, Vorvor got into Romania, and that was the first time it was ever screened anywhere in a festival. And I got to travel to Romania, and I was getting to go to places that I never sort of would have thought about going to. You know, I went to Animateca in Slovenia, I went to Animest in Romania, I went to Brest Film Festival, Filmfest Dresden in Germany, Leipzig, Stuttgart. Like, I was going to a lot of places whilst working on a farm. So, you know, on a Monday, I'd be like driving a tractor in the field or whatever, or washing like down a barn. And then on that weekend, I'd be on a stage doing a talk. So it was kind of a strange sort of parallel, but it was kind of, what that did was teach me and motivate me about what made good films, how sound can be, like bad sound can really affect a film, how to not make bad films. You know, you're kind of exposed to so much stuff and hearing stuff and seeing stuff that it kind of made me really focus on my personal work when I got back home. You know, I still didn't really get how to freelance in a studio. Back then, you kind of had to live in London to really do it. You know, things weren't as remote as they are now. I'm talking 2010, so 11. And now even like I won some awards. That is me holding an award. It's just transparent, so it looks like I'm holding nothing. And my friends are holding awards, but it's a Royal Television Society award. It looks like this, and it was probably the biggest award I won at the time. It's kind of like one below a BAFTA, and I won it for the Wales region. So that kind of spurred me on. And then after that, I worked as well during this year off in a call center at a hospital. That's me on my leaving day. And it was just another like desk job. My mum worked there, and I answered phones and like put doctors through, spoke to patients, that kind of stuff, like put emergencies through. And it was again like a means to make money so that, you know, I could go on and maybe move to London or something. I hadn't quite figured out, but as I mentioned before, Peter Millard, my friend, he'd got into the Royal College of Art, and another friend of ours, Ben Cady, and they went straight after BA. So when I was traveling to festivals, I'd go down to London and stay with them sometimes, because flights to Romania or Slovenia and places like that were only flying from London. So they would tell me about it and how good it was, and they'd show me, they'd get the DVDs from the school of the previous years, and we'd sit and like watch the films, and it was like super inspiring. So I decided whilst working at this job that I'd apply to the RCA because I wanted to make more films. And that job allowed me to like sit at the desk all day with a notepad, and I just drew and drew and drew. And I'd like work night shifts and I draw and stuff. So that kind of is where sort of the personal work and the importance of personal work started to kind of come into it, you know. So I got into the Royal College of Art in 2011, and to do an MA in animation. I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but the Royal College of Art is a masters only school, and you do masters for 2 years, and it's a university of art and design. So you have like, you know, things from like product design to animation to visual communication to vehicle design to architecture to ceramics and glass, printmaking. I think now there's even more courses because they had to expand. But it was really good because you were a core group of people, maybe 15 students, and you had like, you know, your teachers really had time to kind of help you develop. And I think in the application process, they always try to find people that work well together. It's not always about like who's the most talented and stuff. They try and make a core group of people that will work together. And I think it's probably similar in other universities like Estonian Academy of Arts or MOME. And so, yeah, it was pretty productive, as you can see. You might recognize Luța Tot. She was in my class at the time, and we were pretty good friends. That's a pixelation workshop, and that's just us messing around. But, you know, that kind of fun and playfulness really started to feed into my sort of work. You know, I didn't take my stuff so seriously, and that really helped sort of shaping how I work now, like in a sort of very free way. So I graduated, and you sort of graduated the Albert Hall, Royal Albert Hall, which is next door, and it's basically like Hogwarts, and it's like this really over the top thing, and you get to shake James Dyson's hand, and James Dyson is the guy who invented the vacuum with no bag and those dryers that you have in the bathrooms in public toilets and stuff. And he went to the Royal College of Art like a long time ago, and he basically pumped a load of money and has a building named after him. And he was like at the graduations. And so this kind of feeds on to like the lecture now, like that, now that I've talked about my background and talk about the importance of personal work after I graduated. So after I graduated, like, it was once again, I was like, okay, what do I do now? I had a few people interested after they saw my graduation film, Montenegro. Like a few studios called me in to have a chat, you know, maybe talk about representing me as a director for commercial work. Because in London, that's kind of how it works. In the UK, I mean, you have like a lot of agencies, and they represent directors, sometimes live action, sometimes animation, sometimes both. And then they get in the jobs, and you pitch, or you get selected, you get kind of, you know, commissioned for the job, and you work on the job. So you only get paid when you have work. And I remember, like, I went to this studio in London that's pretty well known. I'm not going to say the name, and I had a meeting with the sort of like the owner, the CEO, whatever. And he told me that I should just stick to storytelling, and that my work wasn't really like commercial, and I should just go down that way. And I remember, like, as a graduate, just being like super, like, sort of, well, it broke me a little bit, you know. And so I remember, like, I got the train home because it was the other side of London, and I was like, sort of a bit like, well, what do I do and stuff. And I was like, also like pretty pissed off, to be honest. And I think that kind of helped drive me a little bit. So I went to, I decided, well, I need to pay rent. I don't have a job, you know. I didn't have like help from my mum's, like a single mother. My stepdad helped me a bit, like when I was with rent and stuff. My dad lives in Brazil. It's all a bit tricky. So, and I've always been sort of, as an adult, quite independent. So I thought I need a job. So I knew like a friend from the Royal College who had a friend that was working on this documentary about Brazil and the Rio Olympics, and they needed a bunch of stuff translating. So I got this job at a company called Curation Films, and I just translated, like, with a team, like 700 hours of footage. This is the only picture I have from that job. Got quite a bit done, but also messed around quite a bit. You know, it's quite nice. I was with a bunch of Brazilians and also British people that spoke Portuguese or lived in Brazil. So it was kind of like I was sort of in my tribe, you know, and it was quite nice. But that job was cool because it allowed me again to travel to festivals and things like that. So what I decided to do, because that thing that guy had said about like my work not being commercial and things like that, I decided to, like, you know, make little loops. And I remember Dan Gray, when I was at Newport, I did like a small internship at his studio with Tom Holbrooks, and I worked on a thing with them. And Dan used to tell me, like, it's really useful to like make very small animations, because then you can put them in your show reel, you know, and it looks like they're part of a bigger work. So I made a project called GIF Every Day, and basically it was on the days of Tumblr, so before Instagram and stuff. It was like a blog where every day I just animated a GIF, like a loop, and I posted it, and it worked kind of like a diary. Let's have a look. Yeah, so now the script is all broken, but these used to slide down and have a caption. And they were based on like things that had happened to me during the day, or just inspired by little things, and or sketches in my book. And I just would animate abstract shapes, try different things, try new styles. And what that allowed me to do is have a body of work that I could put into a show reel along with my films and stuff, and like really flesh it out and have like a 1 minute reel of like very diverse work. So then I sent that around to a lot of studios in London, you know, offering myself more as a director, because I still didn't feel fully confident in my animation abilities. So, but I felt like I had like good storytelling skills. And eventually, like, I'll just scroll through that. Eventually oh no. To exit this and go back into the presentation. Yeah, so eventually, like, a studio, an agency called Agile Films contacted me, and they decided to represent me as a director. And that was all based off the personal work I was doing. And then they got me my first job, like directing, and it was all based off a lot of the personal work that I did, you know. So I was just like in my spare time, just doing little things and having fun with it and just playing around. And the first job I did was like for Red Bull, and it was a bunch of videos of like athletes and surfers and people like that telling stories of like near-death experiences. And the first two I did about these two surfers got Vimeo Staff Picks, and that kind of helped get my sort of commercial voice out there, because I'd had Staff Picks before, but on films, and you know, short films aren't always very commercial in the way they the style and things like that. So. And I've never been like commercially drawn. You know, it's just sort of, my style's kind of progressed and evolved over time, and I still don't feel like I'm like super commercial. I still think it's quite, in a way, arty, but some might disagree. But that like really taught me about the importance of personal work and like making things for yourself that in turn will feed into, you know, being lucrative or eventually like leading to other opportunities and kind of you attracting work that makes you feel fulfilled. So I've made like a few steps now that are going to sort of talk about how I sort of harmonize the two, like commercial and personal work. And the first thing I think when you want to make personal work, is the problem that people have is like they feel like they don't have time, or if they're working a lot, they don't feel motivated when they get home and they feel tired. So I think the way I've come up with to stop myself from getting like that is to basically find things that you care about. Because I think like if you have things you care about, then you really enjoy it and you'll make time for it. So no matter how busy you are and stuff, if you're really enjoying a little project that you have going on for yourself, you'll make time for it. You'll find the time to kind of, you know, get some of that work done, whether you get up earlier or you stay up later and stuff like that. And that's kind of something I've applied pretty much since I graduated. Like whenever I'm really, really enjoying something, I'll just like, you know, make sure I make time for it. Even if I'm stressed with something else, I'll try to make time to just work on that thing, because kind of working on my personal stuff is also quite therapeutic and it kind of calms me down and it makes me feel a lot more chilled about what's going on. So in a way, it's a kind of meditation. It's kind of like taking a break. And so I think it's really important. So an example is like, one of the things that I really love and is really important to me since I'm a child is football. I've been like a football fan since basically I'm like a kid. You know, I'm Brazilian and my dad was into football. And, you know, the first thing I remember about football is Brazil winning the World Cup in 1994. So, yeah, that's me when I'm like 10. And this is me at the Royal College of Art playing for the football team there. And so I kind of put that into a lot of my work. It's in my films. Montenegro has a reference to football, and some commercial projects, I'll start to try and slide in a little reference here and there in some of my personal illustrations. And I did a project in 2016 at the Euros, the Euro Football Championship, the one that's going to happen like in the next week or something, called 24 Stars of Euro. And it just started off as me like in the evening drawing a few footballers because I just felt like it really. And then I decided to draw a player from each team that was competing in the tournament. So you have like, you know, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Paul Pogba, Vlad Kirikesh, Eden Hazard, Luka Modric, and Ada Turan. And, you know, I did like a bunch of them, Gianluigi Buffon, Iniesta. And that was like a quite successful project. It got me quite a lot of like exposure on this like other world of like football art, which I didn't know existed. And, you know, I did a few like interviews with some publications and things like that. And then I had client like job offers based on that illustration style, not necessarily football stuff, but it kind of informed what people wanted. So with projects like this, I think it's really important that if you're doing something that you really like and you're putting your heart into it, it's going to come out in the work and people will see that. And then people will actually pay you to do that. You know, I think that's kind of important, is like being true to yourself. If you start going, oh, that's what's popular, that's what's fashionable, that's what's that, I think it's you go down a hole basically where it's hard to dig yourself out of, because in the end you have no identity and you're just going with trends. And I think that's kind of in the current climate we live in with social media. You know, you scroll and it becomes hard to differentiate who did what, because a lot of the stuff starts to merge into one. And I try and be really conscientious of that, and just like, sometimes it's tempting. You're like, oh, that's quite cool. And, you know, this seems to be doing really well. Maybe I should go down that way. But I always try and like reel myself back in and like believe in what I'm doing. And it can be hard sometimes, but I think it's important to like not lose sight. So back to this, 2 years after was the World Cup in Russia. So I decided to revisit the project, and I did 32 Stars of Russia. And you'll see like a difference in style by now. Like it's much more developed and sophisticated than the previous one. You know, it got more refined in those 2 years. And I did like, you know, I had more of a theme and it was kind of more organized, and I just really enjoyed it. And I remember at the time I was like I was doing some motion graphics like thing. It's stuff I don't put on my portfolio. It was like my bread and butter, or rice and beans, as we say in Brazil. It's like, you know, if I need a bit of money, I would do some motion graphic stuff or whatever, if it was kind of around. And I remember like on the lunch breaks when I was working at the agency, I would just get on and try and do one of these, you know, like I would just make time for it, you know, because I knew in the evening I'll be tired, or the weather's nice, I don't want to be at my desk. So I just find like little gaps in the work and that I was doing commercially, and focus on the personal work, you know. And it was quite nice. I'd be watching the games and then drawing the player and things like that. And I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think that's like invaluable, to be honest, like finding what you care about, and then that will like push you to make things for yourself. But another thing that I'm quite passionate about, and it's more recent, is mental health. You know, so I do these like little doodles from time to time and post them on social media, and they're kind of for myself because I sort of like those messages, and I like to, like, I don't know, see them on the wall in front of me or something like that. So I'll make these very quickly in the morning and then just put them online and then get on with my day, like my work day and stuff. They're very simple. They're kind of just like, don't think too much about them. I do them on paper with just pencils and scan them in, and then that's it. You know, I try not to sometimes overwork or overthink. So I guess the next step, or step 2, let's number them, is to be curious. I think when you look at your surroundings, like sometimes you might feel like you're uninspired or you don't feel like doing anything, but look at your surroundings and you can find things that can spike your interest. And I think, and you can find inspiration in places you might not consider. And I think there's a lot of beauty in ordinary things. So during lockdown last year, like I moved to Bucharest in January last year, and pandemic arrived like in March, and then there was a lockdown, and I was in my apartment and stuff, and I was like in a new place, and I'd been here like on and off for about 10 years. And I started to look out the windows because I never lived in a block. I live in like a communist block. And I always found as a kid in Brazil, my cousins lived in these apartment buildings, really curious to look at the neighbors from the window. And living in a block sort of allowed me to do that, because my block faces the back onto like a square where you see a lot of other blocks, and you can at night see what people are up to. And I started like thinking it was quite interesting, you know, everyone's like in these little boxes, like TV screens. So, you know, I started animating just to pass the time, like these little loops of things I would see out my window that maybe to people here are like very ordinary, but to me as an outsider were like sort of interesting and kind of, I don't know, beautiful in a way, you know? So yeah, it was a way of like, you know, it sort of gives you a brief, I think. Like if you don't have an idea and you're sort of curious, or you go out exploring a little bit, and or you look at like, you know, go to an exhibition, or you look at a different artist, or look at a book of design, and you don't just look at, let's say, animation, watch a film, or I don't know, do something that you wouldn't normally do. It sparks like a lot of sort of triggers and like ideas and stuff. So that kind of led into more lockdown stuff. I did this illustration, and it's supposed to like be a play on the 3 monkeys, you know, see nothing, say nothing, hear nothing. And I was seeing a lot of people around, like, you know, wearing a mask on their chin, and then this guy with it on his eye. It was sort of a joke. And I was like really happy with that. And I thought, yeah, you know, that's incorporating where I'm living into the work, and it's also incorporating some of the cultural stuff that I'm seeing. And that's kind of interesting to me, so I'm going to explore it further. So I'm quite into photography, and I started going around Bucharest, like in the area where I live, and photographing stuff. And I'd photograph like day-to-day lives and things, and I kind of was stuck and I didn't know what to do. So I decided to just draw like one of those pictures. I don't normally draw from references that much unless it's like a job. And so I decided to, draw from this stuff. And this is a market near where I live in Gatovo. And I was like, I did that first illustration and I was like, okay, there's something in this, because I've got all these photos and they just kind of live on my hard drive and I don't really do anything with them. So let's kind of push this a little bit. So I started going around the city and just hammering photographs, you know, like I'd written down a big list of photos that I wanted to take, specific stuff I wanted to take, and it started to create a concept of the work. And then, so, you know, I'd go past things and take photos. And it sort of informed this like quite big ongoing body of work. And it kind of makes me have like, I've got quite a few ongoing work. So I'll pause on one and then go to the other one and pause and then jump to another one. And it never has like a, they never finish really. But by doing this, you know, it got me kind of noticed a bit in Romania on the scene, the art scene here. And it was like, you know, and I sort of started to see the little things in the characters that maybe if you're a local, you don't notice. You know, it's the same when people come to Wales or to Brazil and they tell me things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's like whatever, that's standard, you know. But I was seeing these little things like the specific supermarket bag, or I don't know, the guy that sells like pastries, you know, and it's really popular and everyone goes to it and he's like a local character. And, you know, like a sort of family with a lot of kids, like, you know, the Roma community, which I think is like, you know, quite an interesting part of Romania. And then like the local like kebab place and these kind of characters with a lot of gold and just little details that I was picking up. I wanted to kind of, you know, immortalize somehow. And that was like, I think, you know, really sort of important thing for me is that, like, you know, just that curiosity and stuff, you know, going out and just being like, what can I find today? There might be something interesting for me to draw. So then you're chasing an interesting composition or something. And yeah, I mean, and doing this kind of, I was able to push a style a bit more, and then that got, again, like more clients interested. So I'm always like using my personal work as a way to get paid to do that kind of work. So sometimes clients will go to you and they'll want like, you know, older work that you've done from like 6 years ago and you're not into it anymore, you've evolved, but they really want that. And you show them new stuff and they're not into it. So you kind of have to put it into a context and be like, look, this is what I do. And then they'll be like, oh, okay. Rather than just, you know, because this has like a theme and this has a concept. Whereas if it's just one random illustration, doesn't always, they don't really kind of envision it in a context of like commercial. So yeah, there's this old geezer that lives near where I live, and he's always got these amazing caps. Like he's got like a Boca Juniors cap, which is like an Argentinian football team. He's got a Guaraná cap, which is like a Brazilian fizzy drink. He's got this retro Pepsi cap. And I always see him and I was always like a bit scared to take a photo. But then one day he walked past me, so I just got my phone out, held it to my chest and like hit burst mode and just snapped this. And made this little drawing. I prefer the photo though, because he's like, I mean, he's such a guy. Yeah, so there's these two ladies that live outside my block and they sell flowers and sometimes honey and things like that, you know, just like little characters from where I live, like my new world, basically. It was a way to explore that. Some workers going home after a day's work. And yeah, so I guess that leads on to the third like tip, I guess, do it yourself. And I think this is more like, I tried to like think of a way to explain this, but basically I think sometimes the reason I make certain work is because I can't find that, or rather like sometimes the reason I make something is because I can't find it anywhere, it doesn't exist. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just make it. And I think if there's a type of music, like I do this because I play music as well. Like I sing, play guitar for like 20 years. I used to play shows and be in bands and stuff. I was always like trying to make music that was the kind of music that I'd want to hear, but I couldn't find, you know, I'd find things that inspired it, but I couldn't quite find it. So I was just like, well, I'll just make it. And it's not a conscious thing. It's like, it just kind of becomes that. So an example with my art is like, about 6 years ago, I came up with this project called Tom Waits for Stuff. and it's about the musician Tom Waits just waiting for stuff. It's a pretty simple idea, and I was like, surely this has been done, you know, and I checked it out. This was back in 2014. If you Google now, you might find someone's done it, but I know I did it first. It was in 2014, and yeah, I mean, it was back on Tumblr again, but I took it off, and I have it on an Instagram page. And it's just lots of drawings of him just waiting for little things. And I kind of did this because it just made me laugh a little bit, you know, and sometimes it's just like, I'll do it because I think it's funny for me. Like sometimes I'm making work just to humor myself. And again, like this got me clients interested, and had meetings about doing things similar to this, or, you know, in this kind of vein, not necessarily the style, but sometimes the idea itself. And I think, yeah, it's just, that's kind of something quite good to think about sometimes, is like, you're like, oh, I wish there was more of this, or I wish this existed, or that, or sometimes I think like, what I thought about the other day, I was like, I really wish I had a painting like this, and this. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll just try and make it myself. You know, I haven't done it yet, but it's just like this idea of like, well, if you can't find it, then just make it. It comes from punk, like, it's like a punk ethos. Yeah, so I did these for a while, and then I kind of got bored because after a while I felt like I didn't care about it anymore. So it's going back to that thing about like finding things you care about. And this is also an example of like, you do it for a bit, it makes you laugh, but after a while you're like, okay, I think it's done now. So it's kind of one of the few first personal projects where I've kind of ended it. So yeah. I don't know if there's more. Yeah, there's a few more. Yeah, I did tons of these. Wait for the weekend. Some of them are like really obvious, some of them are silly. And he's just got like these 4 poses, like facing forward, to the side, like profile, and then 3/4. Oh, it's 3 poses. Okay, and I guess tip number 4, I think we're on now. I should have just written the numbers. Is switch it up. I think it's like probably the most beneficial thing I find with trying to like sometimes get away from commercial work, or just when you're feeling stuck. Basically, it's and I think it's switch it up means like do something different. It can be like just getting up and going for a walk, getting out of the house, not sitting at your desk, not trying to force things to happen, because that doesn't really work. Traveling, exploring a new technique can be helpful. For example, I've started like getting away from computer again and drawing a lot more on paper, like works, and then scanning them in. Other avenues. So, for example, I did a big commercial project in 2018, and I was like super duper stressed after it and during it, and I just needed like a massive break. And I'd always dreamed about doing this big trip around the Balkans by myself. So I kind of wanted to visit every country in ex-Yugoslavia. I'd already been to Slovenia, Croatia, and Kosovo once for festivals. So I took this trip where I went from Romania to Bulgaria, Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia, Serbia, and back to Romania in 6 weeks with just a backpack. And I took a sketchbook and I wrote like a lot of notes, made a lot of drawings, took a lot of photos, but I didn't put any pressure on myself to like produce stuff. I went purely because I was curious about that place. And I was really fascinated with former communist states, Soviet Union. Like I'm really into that kind of stuff, architecture, design, and things like that from that period, you know. So I went there and I kind of came back with a very fresh, turn in something, but there's a process of digestion sometimes. You can't just do that and then come back and make something. You have to like soak it up and take it in, and that kind of was brewing in me for like a while. And after that trip, I even went to work. Another thing I do to switch it up is I make music, as I mentioned. So I make animated visuals for shows that I do, and things that and I tell stories with songs. And I think that's something, because I've done it for a long time, it kind of feeds into my animation and work, like storytelling. I have like some characters and things like that. I kind of wanted to make a show where I'm like a persona somehow, and then there's like a whole animated show behind me and things like that. But I haven't quite figured out how to sort of build that. And lastly, the way I've switched it up is like I moved to Romania after 8 years living in London and working from a little bedroom commercially, and feeling quite frustrated because I was working too much commercially just to survive. And I was having to share a house with loads of people and paying like 800 euros for a room and feeling very frustrated. So I had a lot of friends here and I had a much more active social life because Bucharest is smaller and it's like a Latin country. So there are some similarities to Brazil and things like that. So, and I kind of been flirting with the idea of moving here for years. So I just decided to do it with Brexit happening and stuff. I thought if I'm going to do it, now's the time because it's easier than it will be after Brexit. So I just got a truck, put all my stuff on it and came here. And the idea was that I could focus more on my personal work, because living in a cheaper country allows you to like have that freedom of like taking on less jobs, or maybe taking on lower paid job, but much more fulfilling for like charities and things like that, and put more effort into it. So I just wanted to feel more fulfilled. I swapped this kind of life in the city that everyone wants to live in, let's say, for a quality of life, a place where I could have my own space and I could get my own studio, which in London was quite difficult for me. So I got my own studio and started working from here. And that was in October after lockdown and things. And I just started producing a lot of work, which I definitely 100% know that if I had stayed in London, I would not be making. And for the first time in years, I feel a lot more like fulfilled with what I'm doing, like the photography project. And I've been doing GIFs based on things here again. Like, it's just, I think being in a new place makes me very curious about the mundane things. Back home, I wasn't really curious about how a British phone box or the Queen and stuff like this, but like in this place, I'm curious about like, the drunken characters, the old grandmas watering the plants, the hundreds of plants in their apartments, the religious icons, the cars that's stacking in the city, the amount of cars, and the guy going upstairs is a character from that photography project who's in the window of the barbers. So I kind of, it was sort of, always like keeping myself busy and trying to, look for something that triggers something. I've got just 2 more steps and then we're done. Next one is work for free, but not really. Like, don't work for free. That's like not a good thing. But there are some occasions, where I have worked for free and it's been massively beneficial. And those are when I've been invited to make idents, like festival trailers. So in 2014, I met Ron Bari from Anibar in Kosovo when we were in Slovenia. And he asked me if I wanted to make the trailer for Anibar. And I said, and he was like, we don't have any budget. And I was like, well, can you bring me to Kosovo? And he was like, yeah. So I said, okay. I got basically a whole free trip from doing this job. So if there's an exchange like that and you get an opportunity, then that's amazing, because obviously you don't just make work for money, you make work so you can have experiences and opportunities. And my father always told me, like, you shouldn't miss opportunities. So I went to, I did the trailer for Anibar and I got to go to Kosovo. So I'll just show it quickly, because I think as well, like when you work on jobs like this, you end up making the best work you make, like the work that you love the most. Like, I made this in 2015 and I still love it because I had the freedom and the trust and I could do whatever I wanted. I'm gonna make it, I have to get out of the full screen in order to make it big. So yeah, that was kind of inspired by video games, the minimal movement and the little music and stuff. And the only brief I got given was that it was about people in Kosovo, the young people in Kosovo are leaving Kosovo, and it's kind of an incentive to kind of encourage people to stay and help rebuild the country, which I thought was really nice. You know, it had a really nice message. And I got to go to Peja in Kosovo, and you know, I had my work, like they made a mural of my work. My work was all over the city, and it was the first time I saw my work in big print, you know, and it was like it was really amazing feeling, to be honest. And I really liked it, and I got to, like, you know, eat food and hang out with nice people and be in a really great country and learn a lot about a place. And that's, I think, one of the nicest things about invited to festivals. You go to places that maybe you wouldn't go to. I mean, Kosovo for me evokes memories of my childhood, of my early teens, of like war and stuff like this, you know. So in the back of my head, back then I wouldn't have thought of going there. But I think, like, coming from Brazil, I've always, like, my dad always told me that if you come from Brazil, you shouldn't really be afraid of anywhere in Europe. So after that, you know, I went to Bosnia, Albania, and I had a lot of people back home being like, "You're doing this alone, you're scared." And I said, "Not really. I mean, it's got nothing." Do you know? So it's yeah, it's really fulfilling and surprising and eye-opening, and just like really enriches you and makes you grow, I think. And the second project links back to Animest. So as I mentioned, I came to Animest in 2010. I did my film was there, then I got invited again in 2013, and then I got invited to be part of a thing called Animation Worksheet, where it's 1 month workshops, working on an animated piece and teaching students or young professionals how to work in a team in animation stuff. It kind of operates like an animation studio now. And it was run by a friend of mine called Vladi Licevic, and he used to work at Animest, and he invited me in 2017 to make the trailer for the festival. In return, I'd get to go to the festival and I'd get to be on the jury again. So I was like, yeah, amazing. And I got to experiment again with, like, things that I was kind of already sort of playing around with, which were little loops, and I wanted to put them together and kind of play around with grids and stuff. So it's one of my favorite projects I've ever done. Oh, hang on, I don't do that thing again. And I think we're running out of time, so I'll make it quick after this. So yeah, that was great, and I'm really pleased with that project. It's one of the few times, you know, maybe I could probably count on one hand, like, projects where they've been commissioned by a client and I've, like, been 100% happy with, and those two trailers are two of those. So yeah, and then you were left with, again, like, a product that you can take to someone and be like, I do this. You know, and they're not going to be like, oh no, we've seen this other thing that Google have done, can you do that? You know, it should be like, no. And then this is my last tip, which is keep a sketchbook. They help get the crap ideas out of your head, and they give space for the good ones. I'm not very precious with my sketchbooks. I've been keeping them for years and years and years. I take them traveling with me. I keep small ones, big ones. I keep ones for notes more, ones for little sketches. But basically, I always have a sketchbook. And I just, you know, if I'm traveling, I'll, like, keep them as sort of a diary, but I don't ever put pressure on myself to work on them every day or write diary every day or anything. They're just, like, sort of an attachment or an extension of my brain, I guess. And, you know, I just explore ideas. I've put some nice pages in here, but a lot of the pages are rubbish. You know, they've got little doodles and vulgar things drawn on them that I wouldn't let my mum look at. But like, it's mostly a way to just like explore ideas, draw things, and it informs the things that you sort of animate. For example, here you can see some of the early sketches for some of those projects that you saw earlier, like the stair loop and the drawing of the photo. Like I try and sketch them out in my books. And yeah, it's really important for me, sketchbooks, because I see a lot of people now, they work on iPads and they work on straight in Photoshop or whatever, and that's fine, but I think you need to have something tangible and physical, because I have this like strange fear that one day, you know, I could just pass away and then all that's left is a hard drive with my work on it. And I don't know, I think it's nice for your work to exist tangibly and to be real, like you can hold it and pick it up. So, and I don't know, you're just a lot less precious. It's just like more raw, you know, the energy I have in my sketchbooks, I've been forever trying to get into my digital work and it's not quite there yet still. Like, so doing the sketchbooks has informed this new project that I'm working on, which is making these comics of this little character called Little Boy, which is kind of based on me and my friends. And like, it's just, I'm at a point where I just want to make work that makes people happy. And I think this is kind of one of those positive things. I find it very therapeutic to work on. I draw like by hand with a dip pen, and, you know, I just take my time on it. And I really think about the idea, and I write a lot of the structure out and the dialogue and things like that. And it's just a project that I really love doing. And it goes back to the first thing, which was, you know, find something you care about. So it's really important for me now, and it's something that, you know, I've been enjoying doing. And it's different from animation and illustration. It's somehow an amalgamation of the two, but it has something else. You know, it's another interesting way of storytelling, and I think that's also related to the switching it up. You know, I'm working commercially in animation, but I want to do this other thing, and I know that I don't have to. It's quite nice drawing this because you know that you don't have to draw the same image several times. You know, you just draw it once and it's that, and you can trace the second one, and just the slowness of it is just really nice. And that in that picture, in this one, it's my friend Isaac. He's like one of my best friends, and he's like a character in it. And just sort of, I'm like a little anxious boy, and he's the one with always the wise words and things like that, and not concerned and giving me advice. And yeah, so I guess that concludes the end of my talk. I just wanted to say again, thank you to everyone that tuned in, CEE for having me, Annie Mest for getting me involved and supporting me and stuff. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, insightful. I hope it was interesting. Maybe you learned something, but in the end, like, you know, do what makes you happy. I guess that's the sort of takeaway from it, because it took me a long time to figure that out. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. I'm sure it was inspiring. We also received some thank yous in the comments, and this is what I want to say to you. Thank you very much. You should know that, yes, indeed, from watching your work, either films or drawings or whatever, you give a lot of energy, you know, and it's really fun to look for your work. Sometimes I remember, let me check on Luis, what has he been doing lately, you know? And then that thing which we were talking about yesterday about you showing fragments of Bucharest, details of the city that we as locals never even notice, you know, because this is what you finally, when you go to a new place, you notice things, but when you live there, you just pass by every day and they are not there. But once you show them to us, oh yes, of course. Yeah. You can think about them and notice them thanks to you, actually. This is great.
Yeah, it's the same. Like I grew up in Brazil, and I didn't go and see Christ the Redeemer statue until a friend of mine came to visit. Like he just, you just see it from the window and you'd never go, you know, until, so it's, yeah, it's, you take it for granted in a way. It's just there. And I never went to, like, when I lived in London, I never went to Big Ben or anything like that. So it's, yeah, it's part of the environment, really. It's just there.
And I was about to ask you about the way you draw, because I know you take photos. You showed us some photos that you've taken, let's say, in the last year, right?
Yeah.
Recent month. And then the drawings, which you usually see on Facebook or on social media, right? And I was curious to know if you do them digitally or you just actually draw them on paper, but I think you kind of answered, right, a bit.
Yeah, I do the stuff based on the Viața în Cartier thing, the Bucharest Street Life project. It was, those drawings were done digitally, but they all began as like, actually have a sketchbook here. They all began like as first initially on a sketchbook. So you have like the Intercontinental and things like that. You know, I kind of always rough everything out. There's like the pastry one and the guys working. So it always starts in a sketchbook, and then I go digital. I try now and treat digital as the last step, because for a few years now, I felt like I lost that connection a little bit with the physical stuff, you know, and I don't know, with working digitally, it gives you too many options to change things and correct things, and that energy is lost. It's very difficult not to undo stuff or, you know, want to clean a line up or something. So, yeah.
And we have a message from Udo Prinsen, actually.
Ah.
Good to see you again, Luis. Thank you for sharing your story. I was curious, did you get offers from publishers for your personal work? Or do you want to publish it yourself, perhaps, as print or books?
Yeah, I never got per se. I had like a publisher in the UK, an art director, get in touch with me and ask me about, like if I ever thought about making a kids book or something. But like, I was like, yeah, I have. And she was like, okay, well, let me know when you have an idea. So at the back of my head, I've been working on some kid ideas, and maybe like that comic that I'm working on might develop into something like that. But I would, yeah, like I've never been explicitly approached by a publisher. But I would love to go into making picture books for children and stuff. It would be really cool.
I hope Romanian publishers too are listening, because that would be lovely to keep you even more in Romania. So I'm sure you kind of like it here, so I think you are not rushing anywhere, right?
No, and I'm expecting a child now, so I'm staying here.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Great! This is quite news. Great piece of news. Wonderful. You said that, well, you came to Bucharest in January last year because you were kind of looking for a better way of working for yourself and not really being forced to accept work which was not really appealing to you, maybe. And then, and because in Bucharest, you can have, because it's a smaller city, so you can have a better social life. And then I said, poor Luis, because actually you were moving here for more social life, and then the pandemic came. How was it for you? I mean, the whole last year and then half of this year, basically.
Yeah, it was a bit strange, but I was like in a relationship, so we living together and stuff, and it was like, it was all right, actually. We're able to kind of go for walks, and that's where I started the photography stuff. And then, you know, Zoom and things like that helped. At the first start of the pandemic, I was on the animation worksheet, and that went online. So every day I was meeting and talking and stuff like this, and sometimes meeting for beers. But yeah, it was a bit strange, but I kind of just got to know my quartier, you know, quite a lot, and it was okay. I always try and look on the positive. So I just thought, well, if I stayed in London, I would have been even more stressed, you know, because during that period, I didn't really have a lot of work, but being here allowed me to kind of relax. And that's where I got more into energy, like drawing a lot more into my sketchbooks, and kind of buried myself into that. So it was a lot better than it might seem, I think, for people when they think about me being here, like moving here and being in London.
Great. So I see we've been a Romanian illustrator that I can recognize says thank you to Annini. We've got a great talk, very inspiring, from Igor Prasel. And we have a question from Paul Mureșan, the Romanian animator.
Yep.
An illustrator too. So he asks, do you have any new personal upcoming animation projects? So moving a bit from drawings to animation.
Yeah, that's something that is, because whenever I work personally, it ends up being more illustration based just because of the time animation takes to invest into. But I'm like sort of working, I've got a script that I wrote like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and I'm trying to rework into it and stuff and make a short film. I have too many short film ideas and none of them feel quite like refined yet, but I want to like get back into short filmmaking again and get on the festival circuit. But there was no point really pushing it now because you can't really travel. And I didn't want to get a film in a festival and then like lose on that experience, because that for me is like the most rewarding part. So, but yeah, no, I definitely like, that's another reason why I moved here, because in the UK film funding is almost non-existent, but in Romania there is film funding. So it's something I'm wanting to explore.
Okay, so Romanian producers, you have just heard Luis saying that he's looking forward to working on animation again. Yeah. Actually, when you say that, well, you would like to make a short animated film, do you think of doing it yourself, or would you like to work as a team? How would it work for you? Because, for example, in Romania, lots of guys, well, they were used to working for themselves, each of them with their computer and so on. At least that was a habit at the beginning of West when we got work from new Romanian animators. And recently I've noticed there are teams, so it's a bit easier now maybe to gather around the project. What would be your take on it? What would make you comfortable?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, because I actually, all my films I made pretty much by myself, except for the graduation film where it was part of the module at school to have first year's work on your film for a bit. So naturally, I think if you'd asked me back then, I would say I'll just make it myself. But since I've been directing projects and directing teams, I definitely see the benefits of working in a team. So if I was to make a film, it would depend on the nature of the film. I'd probably hire like one extra pair of hands maybe, because I think that's also something about working in a film. I don't want to rush just to get it done. I want to enjoy that, because I know that once that's over, I'll have to go back into the 2-week deadlines or whatever of intense like commercial stuff. So yeah, I would work maybe with 1 or 2 people, definitely, just to bounce ideas off, and people that I kind of think similarly to me. And I think that's kind of the way to work, really, for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you have connection to young Romanian animators? Because, well, you've been in the workshop, so you've been a trainer there several times, so you kind of know a bit what very young Romanian animators do. Animation workshop being a project of bringing together very young people from the Film Academy or Art Academy or connected universities from Romania and Moldova. And, well, Luis was one of the trainers, and he taught them how to do things together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still in touch with them? Do you follow their work a bit? Do you give them advice, or?
Yeah, I think like a big chunk of my friends here are like people that I met through that, I actually share a studio with one, Matei Monoranu. He's out of shot, but he's here. So we share this space together. And I think in the beginning I had the studio by myself because it's not such a culture here to have studios. A lot of people work from their bedrooms, but I came from that and I wanted a studio, and I saw that here it's like not so common. So my girlfriend works as a costume designer with some girls, and they rented a house to have a deposit for their clothes and stuff. And there was a room that I rent from them and make it into my studio. And it's pretty nice because, we kind of share ideas daily. We have some routines like going for coffee together and talking about ideas and works. And it's pretty nice. And yeah, I think I have a community here. It's obviously not as big as the one in London, and it's not as developed, but I think it is getting better. When I look back at when I first came here 10 years ago, there was no studios, I don't know. There was no animation course. There was nothing. It was very DIY. And that's what I was saying before, do it yourself. People here, there was these few people doing that, Matei Brania and, a few other guys. And I think, now you have a lot more, and I think it's getting there. I think when I sometimes speak to Romanians and I go, things here are growing and improving. A lot of people are like, nah, and they're quite negative. But I don't know, with a different punct de vedere that I have, like, it's, yeah, I don't know. It's, I think things are definitely developing. It's not there yet, but it will be, I think.
Well, this is great. Like teaching them a bit to work together and not really hate what the other does, you know.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
that's
a
the thing.
Romanian, I don't know if it's a Romanian or Balkanic feeling, but it's like, yeah, no, you're not
Yeah.
good at that. I'm better than you.
There's a jealousy for sure, but I think it comes from insecurity. I definitely see that, this kind of like weird, and whereas I come from a culture where everyone's helping each other, like, hey, I can't do this job. Does anyone else? I'll recommend my friend. But here it's like, oh, who's this client? It's just like, it's yeah. But I think again, it's improving with the younger generation. I think it's definitely.
Actually, when you came here, there were no studios. I think most people did some personal things in between commercials, or maybe they used to work for big media advertising studios, right?
Yeah.
And then there was no animation school, but now the National Academy of Film and Theatre in Bucharest has got an animation department.
Really?
Not only masters, yes, of course, talk to Matei Brana and go there.
Yeah.
I hope the guys from UNATC are watching now, and they will knock at your door and say, hey, I want you to take a look at this, because it's so important for them to show their work.
Yeah, definitely. I think culturally here, that's something as well. Like, people are very shy about asking for help. I think maybe this is a hangover from communism, I don't know, but like, you don't want to show some kind of weakness by asking for help. And I think, I ask for help all the time. Like, it's, and if I don't have jobs, let's say it's a dry period and I don't really have anything to work on, I'll email my friends or call my friends up and be like, do you know if anything's going, and they'll be like, oh, I heard blah blah's on this job and they need storyboarder, or they need, and it's like, I don't know, it's a small world, animation, so you might as well all get on and help each other.
I think it works like that in a lot of other areas, not only animation, especially with freelancers,
Yeah.
You keep your work there, you don't want to show it to others.
Yeah.
I remember at the beginning of the festival, so anime started in 2006. Imagine if 2010 looked like that, how even earlier things were here. And when we decided to make the Romanian competition section, we knew there were things, but of course we didn't expect like big projects, but at least make people send our films and their films, and nobody wanted to. I have a film in my drawer, but no. Come on, show it.
Yeah.
Or they showed their film, but they didn't come to the festival themselves. And it's contrary to what you were saying. I want to make a film and go to festivals with my film.
Yeah.
Of course, this is something that a lot of people missed last year. Yes, I'm sending you my film. I really wanted to be there, but the purpose was for me to travel, especially with short films, right? So you want to go with a film and take it to festivals.
Yeah, it's really nice to put your face to a film and meet other filmmakers, because animation is a small world, but filmmaking within independent animation is an even smaller world. And you have like, the guys making more abstract animations, they go to festivals every year, they can churn out films. My good friend I mentioned, Peter Millard, he goes to festivals every year. He's always got a new film, and there's a core group of people always at those festivals. They're characters, they're on festivals. And I think now in Romania, it's getting there now, the Romanian competition. Like Matei Brana has film in there, Paul Mureșan's films are getting around, and there's a few other people up and coming as well. Some of them worksheepers. And I think like that's like pretty amazing, because not only are they just getting like in a Romanian competition Animes, they're getting like, Ottawa or Stuttgart, Annecy, and Sergiu Negulic as well, like it just came to my head. So you've got these guys, and girls as well, getting like, around, which I think is good for the scene here. And it was also something in my head when I moved here, it was like to kind of help develop things or work a bit in the field and kind of see, because in London, I was very much a small fish in a huge pond, and I feel like I'm quite into like helping and teaching and working with people, and I think here gives me that opportunity too.
How easy is it to keep in touch via internet? For example, for work, would you work on a project only online, so without meeting your colleagues without meeting the team of a film, because I think in the last, let's say, 14, 16 months, this is what people have been doing. You either work on it yourself, or you work, but everybody's in their home, they never meet. How would you feel about working like that?
It's not so new for me, because that's one of the reasons I left London too, is most of my clients are in the USA or Germany and stuff, not so much in the UK. So I was working online with a client quite a lot. And if I employed people, because I was working from a bedroom, I didn't have a studio or a desk for someone else to work with. We were all working remotely and using Slack, or what's the other one that's like Slack? Discord, and communicating on that. And then, so it wasn't too bad. As long as you're very clear with the communication. And right now, like since November, I've been helping on Matej Branja's film, and we've mostly been working online just with meeting as well. So it's not so alien for me. And living here, I'm pretty much still working for foreign clients. So it's not too bad. Obviously, it's nicer to be in the environment though, because then you can just be like, what do you think of this? Can you have a look at this? Rather than wait for their response and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of hearts from Jerry Radcliffe. Sashka Mayova says, thank you, so inspiring and positive. The Romanian illustrator I was telling you about, she wants to be an intern for a personal animation project of yours. Irina Shelaru, I absolutely love your work. Viswava Ruta, thank you, very honest talk and inspiring. Igor Prasel, as I said. Okay, really, really lovely to see their messages with us. Tell me, Luis, so now you were born in Brazil, then you went to live in the UK, and it's where that you studied animation, and then you moved around and you decided to come to Romania. Yeah. How important do you think is the place where you are? I mean, for an animator, because I think luckily UK has a great school of animation, so I think it was great for you to be there and to study there, and then to have the freedom to move around. Would you be the same, let's say, integrated in Brazilian animation, or do you feel like belonging to a national kind of school of animation or pond of animators? Or
yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I go to therapy and I talk a lot about identity, because, you know, being like a Jumi Juma, how do you say Mongol? It's sometimes can be difficult to know what you feel, you know. And I think in Romania, I just feel like I'm just a foreigner. In the UK, I was always justifying my Brazilianness, and in Brazil, I was always justifying my Britishness. So it's I think with work, it's a bit like that. But I definitely feel like I belong to the scene and the sort of school of the UK, because my films are like very British humor. My humor is quite British. You know, in France, when my films got screened in festivals in France, you know, the French always like, you know, l'humour britannique, you know, it's like a thing. So yeah, I definitely feel like that. And I think it's mentality. Although in the UK, the schools do vary. You've got schools like I went to, which are very much more auteur-based, where it's about your identity and your storytelling. And then you have the other schools which are making animators to work in the industry. And just that, like, they might not be people necessarily interested in exploring their own work. They just want to work for Pixar or, you know, bigger studios. And I think that's really cool. And it's the same in France, isn't it? You have Gobelin and you have like Angoulême and SAD, and they're making very diversely different stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but like, yeah, I think if I'd been raised in Brazil, I probably wouldn't have been an animator. I would have become an architect, because animation school in Brazil is a bit like in Romania. It's not seen as a viable profession. There are studios more commercial, and we have some animation shows on Cartoon Network there now, but it's still like, you know, and I would gone into architecture, I think, or something like that, because that's the most creative and respected, you know. Otherwise you become a doctor or a lawyer. They're kind of the, you know, what your family want you to be. So yeah, and I don't know that many animators in Brazil. I know a few, but not. Most of them are in Europe or in Vancouver, a lot of them, yeah. Yeah,
even if they have a big several animation film festivals, but one, Anima Mundi, which is really huge.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I've never attended the festival, but I've been following their activity, and they talk about a long tradition of animated film, right? And we sometimes receive film submissions from Brazil for animes. So films for children, for example, there were quite a lot of films for children, I think, in the last, let's say, 10 years.
Yeah.
A feature film from time to time, but not so many. There was the famous I was the boy and O Menino e o Mundo, right? Which was a huge success.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah. And if you were born in Romania, I don't know, maybe you would have become an engineer or
something like that. Politician.
or a politician, yes. Why not? Think about it. Think about it, Luis. We need young, convincing, good, like open-minded politicians. Why not? You have the charisma. Why not? Why not? All right. If people want to contact you, I think they can do it on your website, right?
Yeah, they can do it on my website. I'm on Instagram as well, Luiz Stockler Studio on Facebook and stuff. If you don't know how to spell my name, look on the poster or the slate for the talk, because people think it's with an S, but the Brazilian way is with a Z.
Yeah, we are used to the Spanish way of spelling names, I think.
But in Romania, you have Luisa. You just don't have Luis, so it's
But we don't have the masculine of Luisa,
Luci, they call me.
Really? This is so Romanian. Oh my gosh, and so old school Romanian. Galezu. Guy from the Wales, so Luis from the Wales. Great. And how about so you don't have printed work? For example, if people want to get a drawing from you, no.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm really bad at that. Like, I think I'm going to start doing that though, because I've had that for years. People asking for stuff, and I've just always been like, I don't know, and I think I should get on it. I just get overwhelmed with merchandise, So I tend to do original stuff. If someone wants a drawing and that, I could sell drawings and stuff. But once I do make a shot, which I guess I'll try and do this year at least.
Okay.
I'll put it on my social media channels so people can discover it.
So you're planning to do the film, but you don't have it yet, like an idea or anything.
I have a script, but I don't know if I just scrap it or rewrite it. I need to look at it again. I wrote it in 2018 after this trip around the Balkans. I had it in my head, then I wrote it down when I was in a rainy day in Montenegro in a bar. I just wrote it and really scruffily, and then wrote it when I got back. And I don't know, it's missing something, But then I'd like to make live action films at some point too. I think I would migrate from animation to live action one day. I think.
All right.
Tell stories really. Animation's just a tool, I think, for me. It's
short film. Or are you planning a feature?
Not yet.
Live action?
No, not yet. But short film maybe. I don't know. I just would like to explore that, because I tell stories in music, I tell stories in drawing, in animation, and I think live action would be a new thing to, work within. And I feel like here you have this opportunity more so again in the UK. And here I have a lot more connections in live action than I did back there. So.
Great. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then maybe the last couple of minutes, if you were to wrap up a sort of piece of advice for people, only a very short, let's say for young people getting out of school, being maybe a bit disoriented, not knowing they want to be filmmakers and animators, but they don't really know what to do next. What would be your wrap-up advice, so to say?
It's difficult, but I think in the end, it's just more like being true to yourself. You might see a bunch of stuff that's being popular right now, but just stick to what you enjoy and what you like doing. Don't feel pressured to change that, because eventually, it might not feel like it, but eventually people will see something in that, and it'll pay off. You have to be patient a little bit. And that might require working other jobs like I've had to do, but I think stay true to yourself. And a good example is my friend I mentioned, Peter Millard. After Royal College of Art, he knew straight away that his work wasn't commercial at all, because he makes very crazy kind of psychedelic films. So he got a job at Natural History Museum in London and worked there for 8 years and made short films, and that's it, and traveled festivals. and he just wanted to make short films. And now he's like a lecturer at one of the best animation schools in the UK, at Kingston University. So it's, you know, he really believed in what he did, and he created a big audience. And, you know, he did talks in Japan and everywhere now. Yeah, in the beginning, people were like, what is this weird stuff? I remember at school, and I think he's a prime example of like, stick to your guns, you know, if you can, play to your skills. You're good at, there's one thing that you're doing that must be really good, and there's other stuff that's okay, but with that one good thing, it can work really well. So just, yeah, believe in that, I think.
Great. Thank you very much, Luis. I think you've given us a recipe, and I hope lots of people can take out of it whatever they need. Thank you for being close to the festival for such a long time.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll continue we'll be watching you.
Yeah.
We'll have an eye on you all the time.
Yeah. I'm going to put tape on the camera.
Right.
Right.
In the end, I would like to thank CEEA Animation for the opportunity of bringing Luiz Stockler here today for this inspiring lecture. There's a short video that we're going to play at the end, and I would like to say thank you very much, and keep an eye on CEEA Animation and on the animation film festivals around. Thank you. Have a nice day.